So visibility of system status. I mean, this applies to software and it applies to apps and it applies to websites, but it's kind of like knowing where you are, orientating yourself with where you are. So having things like breadcrumbs and having good navigation, and there's a rule of affordance. So that means that when you know how to get back to home, which is the connotation of a safe place to get back to, and it's about, if you look at a door, you know, a door, an actual physical door that you walk through in to exit or enter a room, you should be able to look at that door and see if you need to push it or pull it, or if it's got a handle on it and things like that. So you should be able to, at any given point on a website, you should know where you are, and you should know where your exits are. You should know what your next steps are. When you click on a button, you should have a reasonable grasp on what will happen before you've clicked on it. And that's why I hate to see links which are click here, which I think is really bad practice, because in terms of good hyperlink text, good link text, you're meant to describe the purpose of the link out of context with the preceding paragraph. So this is really good link text, continuous communication. If it's a click here, I will consider that to be really bad link text. So that's heuristic number 1, which is visibility of system status. Number 2 is match between system and real world. Again, real world connotations, using simple language, not using jargon, mapping things naturally, using writing to your audience, and just using short sentences is something that we know that Google looks for, and using real world conventions. The classic one is the little house icon for home. So it's for most people it's a place of safety. So it's a connotation of returning somewhere safe at the end of the day. So if you get lost in the website, you click on home page, you get back to the start, and you've kind of not confused anymore. You're not disorientated if there's a confusing user experience, and you're just using terminology that people are familiar with, and there's a thing in website usability which says make your website the same as the last 1,000 websites that you visited, and it's things like when people come to me and say, I want a radical design and I want the menu at the bottom rather than at the top, and I say no, you want it at the top because that's what people are used to, and it'll make things easier. When somebody lands on your website, you've got a limited amount of time in which to engage them. You don't want to have radical ideas too much. You want innovation, but you need it to be usable. So it's like if I climbed into the top of a car, like on or through the side window, like in Dukes of Hazzard. It wouldn't be great in terms of the design principles, and it wouldn't be as accessible to as many people as well, even though it looks cool. So you've got to think when you're designing a website or having a website designed for you in terms of familiarity, and that stands for design and terminology. And if you're going to use jargon, if you need to use jargon or big words or complex words, then in terms of the plain English campaign, explain any acronyms. Don't have an acronym on a page and then don't explain it anywhere, so somebody has to go back to Google and then go to dictionary.com to explain where it means, or even land on a competitor, or they might end up finding there's a better user experience. That's not good practice. So think in terms of that. So that's your match between system and real world. The third one is user control and freedom. So again, I mean, I've touched on this, but it's about, and all these kind of tie in with each other and flow into each other, all these 10 heuristics, and it's all about good design. It's like having an emergency exit. So if you think in the real world, if you're in a restaurant and unfortunately there were a fire and you knew you went to the fire exit and there's a protocol with that, knowing your exits and things like that, then, it's like that with websites as well. So if you make a mistake, if you're on a form, and the classic one that I see is when you're filling out a form, and then I've seen websites where you get to the end of the contact form and you've got terms and conditions, and you click on the terms and conditions. takes you to another page, and then you go back and you've lost the form, you know, because there's something wrong with the programming. That's a terrible form, yeah? Or, for example, if you fill out a form and you've made a mistake and you try to solve it, but all the form refreshes and you lose all your work, things like that. It's frustrating for users. It'll make them fall out with the website. They probably won't come back after spending a few minutes to fill out a long form. That's another thing. Try to have shorter forms and then capture some more information later on as you get to know that customer. So take just a name and email, take name, email, phone number, take name, email and nature of inquiry, and business if it's a business-to-business relationship that you're looking at building for your website. So a B2B. So less is more, basically. So user control and freedom. It's about being able to reverse an action. It's about being able to get out of trouble if you get into trouble on a website. If you clicked on the wrong thing, it's about being able to get back without having to think too much. It should seem natural. Number 4 is about consistency and standards, and I'm a big stickler for this in terms of not causing too much cognitive load with people. So it's about conventions, and it's about always having an about page, having a contact page, things that people expect, things that you need for legal reasons, for legislative reasons, for governance, terms and conditions, privacy policy, familiarity, and it really is about good design as well. So I think there's nothing worse than kind of having a menu at the top. I mean, having the menu at the top is good, but there's nothing worse than clicking on a menu item, then landing on a page which looks completely different, like with a different menu system, for example, which is really bad, or a different logo. So the logo's at the right when you click on the page, and on previously were on the left, and you know, you've got things all jumbled up and things like that, which is really bad. So I've seen websites where you go on the home page, the menu's at the top, then you go onto the about page and the menu's at the left hand side, and it's a bit jumbled up, a bit of a mishmash, which is really bad. And what it's all about is, with consistency you get kind of learnability. So it's all about almost like being able to know that if you don't even end up reading the contact page, because the contact link in the menu, because you know that it's at the top right. So you know that's at the top right. You should click on that with very low cognitive load, so it doesn't tire you out. And it's all about finding your way through a website with as little cognitive load as possible, so you don't get tired, or you don't tire out your users. What's the point in forcing somebody to learn something? You want them to look at the important content, not to stumble about with the menus, as one example of good design. So consistency throughout. Another thing that I see a lot, which is a mistake, is you do need to have a separate heading one for each page. But I've seen different font sizes and even different font styles, which is terrible. And it just confuses people. Yeah, so there's lots of examples. So another thing, so rule number 5 is error prevention. So it's about being clear. So if you've got a contact form, this is a good example where maybe there's lots of debate on this, but when you've got a contact form, you can have first name, last name, or first name, surname. Now, if you just got name, then some people might put in the full name, which you'd expect them to put in. So if they've just got name, they can just put in the first name. Sometimes people will put in the first and last name, which would be okay too. For me, I either like to see full name as one field, so people put the full name in, or first name and last name as two separate fields. I don't like to just see name. Even though in testing, when we just had name, most people have put in the full name anyway. So it's things like that that you'll be looking at. Error prevention with putting in an email, and actually doing validation and testing for things is also a really good idea. We're talking particularly in like clear calls to actions as well. So if you've got a call to action and there's ambiguity around it, so you don't know exactly what you're going to get, again back to that rule of affordance, you click on a call to action and then you end up going to a page that you weren't expecting, then you click back. It's all going to frustrate a user.